This movie puts the dark in dark comedy. Martin McDonagh's 2008 film In Bruges is one of the funnier movies I've seen in a long time, but it very unexpectedly turned into one of the deeper philosophical discussions I've ever seen posed in a comedy. What starts as a story of two hitmen sent on a hideout becomes a mix of morality, predestination, the karma cycle, religion, and the afterlife. The concept of heaven and hell has been debated over, portrayed, and symbolized in so many different mediums for centuries. But personally, I find purgatory to be a far more interesting subject, especially when it's symbolized in art. While being such an existentially dreadful and serious topic, In Bruges finds a way to keep you laughing, guessing, and entertained while taking you down an extremely dark journey. Make sure to like and subscribe, and let's enter purgatory from the mind of Martin McDonagh. Ray, played by Colin Farrell, and Ken, played by Brendan Gleeson, are two hitmen sent to Bruges, Belgium by their boss to wait for things to cool down after their most recent mission. These two would later share the screen in McDonagh's Oscar-nominated Banshees of Inisherin, which has a pretty similar setup. A dark comedy drama about two Irish friends that explores some very serious themes. I haven't seen the latter, but needless to say, this trio clearly works very well with each other. And that's apparent pretty quickly in this film when, from the opening scene, these two have some absolutely hilarious banter with each other and some great chemistry. Ken is a man of culture and he wants to use his vacation as an excuse to explore the historical buildings, the artwork, and the overall medieval vibe of the city, while Ray just wants to get drunk and be anywhere else but here. Ray hates Bruges. Like, a lot. And from the start, we get this feeling that he is stuck here against his will. Night 1, and they are expecting a call from their boss Harry with some more direction on what they are supposed to do while they're here. But Ray, bored out of his mind, convinces Ken to go out under the guise that they check out some of the architecture. They stumble across a film set where Ray notices an attractive female that he just has to talk to. He ditches Ken and, with some pretty strange, nervous game, somehow manages to get her number. Fellas, do not take notes. As Ken goes back to the hotel, the manager gives him a note from Harry, who called while they were gone, and he is pissed. Tomorrow night, they must be ready for his phone call. Day 2, and it's more of the same. Hilarious banter, Ken dragging Ray along, and Ray hates every second of it. While Ray takes a step outside, he notices a mother and two kids walking on the street, and this sends him to a flashback that changes the entire course of the movie. On Ray's first job as a hitman, the one they are here to cool down off of, he was sent to kill a priest. But one of Ray's bullets went through the priest and accidentally hit a nearby altar boy doing his prayer routine. So yeah, Ray killed a young child and this has been eating away at him ever since. I'm telling you, this movie is full of surprises. After this flashback, he rejoins Ken at an art museum, and this is where we start to get some symbolism. 3 paintings stand out as he walks through, and they tell us what's really happening in this movie. 25 minutes in, and all the answers are right there. I'm definitely going to butcher some of these names, so bear with me. The first one is Death and the Miser by Jan Prevost. The painting depicts death, symbolized by a skeletal figure, collecting his debt from this man, which in this case is his life. This title and painting are said to represent the futility or the uselessness of wealth and material items, paired with the inevitability of death. This guy is trying to pay the skeletal figure his debt with money, but that will not suffice. The pursuit of material wealth is inherently sinful. It's greed. And when it comes time to pass on to the other side, that money is not going with you and it will not save or absolve you of your sins when it's time to be judged by God. When Ray is talking to the priest, assumingly distracting him so he can kill him, he says his sin is that he killed a man solely for money, no other reason. This job was just for material wealth. His greed led him to committing one of the most sinful acts, murder. But you know, we don't know the priest or why Ray was sent to kill him, so maybe it could be understandable why he did it. But the child, that is the purest form of innocence. There's nothing that he could have done to deserve this. The child represents the consequences of Ray's sins that he now has to live with. It's just the cherry on top that a priest is who he was sent to kill in the first place. The next painting is The Judgment of Cambys by Gerard David, and it takes a similar approach in representing the sin of greed. It depicts a judge, someone who is supposed to represent moral authority, being punished for his sin of greed. He was taking bribes, ultimately tainting the process of justice. His punishment is like one of the worst forms of torture I could possibly imagine, flaying, where they remove the skin from the person while they're still alive, which would very obviously kill them. And some say this is in attempts of purification and renewal, but either way, this is the judge's form of ultimate judgment. And finally, very fittingly, we have The Last Judgment by Hieronymus Bosch. This is where we get the symbolism of the afterlife in Purgatory. Ray's greed and murderous ways have brought him to his punishment, which you'll find out very soon, is death. And that debt is now being collected and there's nothing he can give to repay it besides his life. But what will happen to him after he passes? The painting has 3 panels: the fall of humanity during the second coming of Christ, the actual judgment itself, and the souls who failed the judgment being sent to an eternity in hell. But it can also be looked at as heaven, purgatory, and hell. Now, I'm not a religious person per se, but this is my understanding of what purgatory is. It's said to be where souls can atone or make amends with God for their sins on earth. If they accept and love Him and ask for His forgiveness, they can be cleansed and moved on to heaven. If not, they will be sent to hell. The first 2 paintings are diptychs or double-paneled, possibly to represent the black and white nature of judgment and sinful behavior, good and evil. If you commit certain acts, you will be punished. But the third painting is a triptych, triple-paneled, showing the gray area of morality, bringing us our second biggest theme of In Bruges, but we will get into that in a minute. Ray goes on a date with the girl from the film set while Ken waits back for the phone call from their boss. And good thing Ray was gone because this message was just for Ken. They were sent here for Ken to murder Ray. And the location of Bruges was chosen because Harry loves this place and thought it would be a great vacation experience for Ray to have before he died. Also, a crazy surprise, Harry is played by Voldemort. But anyway, Harry is a man of principle, and killing a child is something no man should do under any circumstance. Even if it was an accident, the only proper solution to balance this out is death. He even says if he did the same, he would shoot himself right there on the spot. And the fact that Ray hasn't done the same leads him to taking care of this in his own way. But Ray knows this too. Since this incident, he has been very suicidal. It's a topic he brings up multiple times throughout the film. So when Ken goes to kill him, because he not only has a similar principle system to Harry, but he also owes him a lot, Ray is about to do the job himself. But Ken stops him. He says he'll give him money to start a new life somewhere and try to do something good with his life. Save the next little boy. He realizes how much regret and remorse Ray has, and acting as a godly figure is giving him his second chance at life, exiting this hitman profession as well. He has the capacity to change. The last act of the movie is Harry coming to Bruges to kill Ken, and when Ray tries to leave on a train, a cop brings him back because he beat up a couple that he got into a fight with while on a date with that girl. He cannot leave Bruges even if he tried. He is stuck in purgatory. It all leads to a final showdown where Ken sacrifices himself to save Ray, and Harry and Ray get into a shootout that ends at the film set where the dream sequence scene they are shooting looks exactly like the middle panel of the Bosch painting, further showing us the purgatory symbolism. And when Harry puts his final shot through him, it accidentally kills a nearby actor, a man with dwarfism, that is dressed like a young schoolboy. The gunshot makes the man's face completely unrecognizable, and to Harry it looks as if he just murdered an innocent child. And sticking to his principles, he shoots himself on the spot. We are left not knowing if Ray actually dies or not, as he is carried away in an ambulance.
And I really, really hoped I wouldn't die. I really, really hoped I wouldn't die.
Bruges is the best symbol for purgatory I've ever seen portrayed in a film. They are stuck here and with no real direction or purpose for the first half of the movie, are wandering around and just waiting. From the second they get there, you see very little outside the main area that they are staying in. You can't see past the buildings, there is a fog that literally covers what is past it, and when Ray tries to leave, he is physically unable to because of the more sinful or illegal acts that he has committed. The location feels cut off from the rest of the world and is described as fantasy-like. I know I'm awake, but it feels like a dream. And he was sent here based on a previous decision that he made. Harry represents the first act of Judgment Day, death. He is the judge, the jury, and the executioner. He's the one that orchestrated this trial that Ray is going through. His morals and principles are very black and white and medieval in nature, hence why he loves this medieval town surrounded by religious artwork and architecture. Just like how Bruges feels stuck in the past, he is stuck in this very traditional, based in religious belief, principle system, an eye for an eye. And even though Ken has been more on Harry's side in the past, he has the biggest progression of the film. After the art museum scene, he talks to Ray about his wrongdoings as well. Yes, he has killed people, but they were not good people. And the only person he killed outside of his work was an act of self-defense. But there is still the question of if he was truly in life or death danger. He is the gray area of morality. There's more factors than just right or wrong, sinful or not. And I mean, he is literally wearing gray as they look at the painting of Purgatory. Why did he not kill Ray? He was going to, but stopped once he saw Ray was going to do it himself. Is it because he finally sympathized with him after seeing how guilty he truly felt and what this action has done to him? Almost like this guy has already been through enough if he was willing to unalive himself? Or maybe it's the belief in the Catholic religion that if you unalive yourself, you can't get into heaven. He saw that as a worse fate. Earlier in the film, he says that some things you learn as a child will always stick with you. Maybe this was one of those teachings. But is suicide really worse than murder? Or are they one and the same? Then we have his final confrontation with Harry. He says he is forever in debt to him and respects and loves him because of his integrity and honor, and he knows Ray, who he refers to as the boy, has done wrong, but he still believes he deserves a second chance. There's some context missing on how Ray got into the business in the first place. Maybe it was just for money, but Ken still views him as innocent and capable of change. Ken represents the actual judgment that takes place in the afterlife. It doesn't matter if Ray actually dies at the end of the film because the guilt and the waiting in this in-between stage was his punishment. He was forced to come face to face with his actions and his mortality. Him deciding that he doesn't want to die and his actions towards the end of the film show that he was ready to change. He metaphorically accepted his sins, asked for forgiveness, and wanted to live in a morally correct way. To him, there wasn't a fate worse than living in Bruges for eternity. That would be hell, forever stuck in purgatory. The film is making us, the audience, question our own beliefs. Ray, at face value, is a child murderer. But by the end of the film, we find ourselves sympathizing with him and wanting him to get the second chance that most humans deserve. At least that's how I felt. But does anyone truly deserve a second chance after such a crime? It's questioning our morality. When is eye for an eye applicable, if at all? It's a pretty barbaric way of dealing with punishment, but it stemmed from religious belief. If we are looking at the concept of purgatory according to Catholicism, God believes that there is room to change and become better even after living such a sinful life. So maybe we aren't meant to decide that. Then you have a character like Mickey, the little person. His hatred for his condition and the world for treating him the way people have has turned him into a racist and all-around pretty bad person in a form of coping with his situation. So do you feel bad for him? This movie is showing all sides of morality and how none of them are truly right or perfect. Some people side with Harry that the best solution for murder is murder, and some people side with Ken that people have the capacity to change like himself. And then Ray is the subject that we are judging. What would you do in his situation? If you were given the chance to make things right, would you take it, or do you not deserve it? If you were in Ken's shoes and you saw someone commit a crime as horrible as murdering a child, would you give that person a chance to change? What if you knew it was an accident? Does that make them less or more deserving of a severe punishment? You have to decide what is right or wrong. That's why the ending is left ambiguous. Do you want Ray to live or die?